Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the DJI Goggles 3. The first thing we're going to do is go over the mechanics of the goggles, then we're going to go through the menus. Now, the menus are going to change slightly depending on which remote controller you have hooked up, whether it's the RC3, the motion controller, and also the aircraft that you have it hooked to. Today, I'm going to demonstrate it with the Avata 2 and the RC3, so you have the joystick control. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go over the mechanics. Now, obviously, a lot of you already know how to do this, but I'm going to cover pretty much everything. And if I don't cover something, drop me a comment below and I'd be happy to answer your question. The first thing is the power button. Now, the power button is located right here. The way we activate the power button is by pressing it once and then pressing it again and holding it down. That will activate the power on it. Now, this button also will act as a pair button. So if you're trying to pair this to an O3 or an O4 air unit, or even the Avata sometimes, you will be prompted to hold this button down and put it into pairing mode. So it's a multi-function button. I'm going to go ahead and turn my goggles off here by pressing, as you saw, and holding it again. The next switch that we have on the goggles is the 5D switch here. Now, the 5D switch means it moves 5 directions. The first thing is you press down on it, and this is going to give you menu options. You can also press forward on the joystick, backwards on the joystick, to the right and to the left. So that's where you get the 5 directions on that. The next thing on the goggles is you've got 2 cameras mounted in the front of the goggles here. And these are activated by double tapping on the side with the battery. We're going to get into that in the menus, and I'm actually going to show you the view. I figured out a way that I can record it using a smaller camera through the lenses because DJI won't allow that through the screen capture on the system itself. So we also have the antennas that we need to flip up when we're flying. And as you see on my goggles here, that I've changed the foam to a soft foam that's more of a conventional foam. The original foam, I live in Georgia, it's very hot. It's more of a plasticky kind of, and I sweat a lot, so I like something that absorbs the sweat. You also notice here that I have some lens protectors, and DJI does not provide any lens protection, so I actually found this. So what I'll do is I'll drop a link in the description below for this soft foam if you want to give it a try, as well as the lens protectors themselves. Now, speaking of the lens, the nice thing about the Goggles 3 is that you have the IPD adjustment, so you can adjust your pupil distance is basically what it boils down to. Also, the focus point, if your eyes are off slightly, if you wear glasses, you can adjust that out. The first thing to adjusting that, as you see here, is these 2 knobs on the bottom. Now, to adjust these, you need to turn it counterclockwise and then the button will pop out. Then you can change your focus. You can also slide it to the right or left until you get it adjusted. Once you've achieved your adjustment, what you want to do is push the button back in and turn it clockwise till it's nice and snug. Then it will be locked down and your settings will definitely be saved, which is nice. On older goggles, on the original V2 goggles, it just slid back and forth and there were 3D printed things you could put in there to hold it in place, but DJI has risen to the occasion and fixed that, which is really nice. That, other than the adjustment you have here where you can click this forward and click it backwards to fit your face a little bit better. For me, I always know that I just put it 1 click forward. You have your strap here. Obviously, this is the battery here, and then your adjustment for your headband, and you have to put it on fairly tight. So hopefully that covers all of the mechanics of the goggles. So let's go ahead and get into the menus and go over all of the different options that are available to us. Okay, now we've got our goggles on, and it's time to get into the menus. The way we access the menu, or at least the main menu, is we press down on the 5D button. And I said the main menu. There's actually 2 other menus in here. I'm going to hit the back button, which is going to put that menu away. Then I'm going to push the 5D switch forward. That's going to give us our camera quick access. Now, all of these settings across the bottom are going to be available through the main camera menu. But if you're out flying, or in my case, I use this a lot for real estate videos, I might want to change the camera settings depending on the day conditions. I can press the back button, that'll take me out. Now if I pull or push the 5D switch towards myself, I get the top menu here, and this will allow me to record on the goggles. This one is the enhanced display, and what you would use that for is if you're recording in the D-Cinelike mode, that would give you more color. This turns on the head tracking, and these can all be turned on elsewhere in the menu. This is just the quick access. The next one here is the share your live view, the easy acro. This one's one of my favorite, which is the goggles defog, which you can turn on elsewhere, but I always turn it on here. This will reset when you turn the goggles on and off. And then of course the brightness. Any of these, if I wanted to turn on the defog, excuse me, you just press down on it and then the fan will start to run. You press down on it again, same as with the brightness. You press down on it with the 5D button, and then you can actually change the brightness by moving the 5D button right and left. So now that we've covered the top and the bottom menu, let's go back to the main menu. We press down on the 5D button. The first thing is status. What the status is going to do is show you any error messages or anything that's not correct or even correct. As you see here, it says my remote ID is functioning normally. Now, one thing that's kind of hidden on this menu is this little thing up here that says switch. And you go, well, what's switch? Well, switch actually is to switch to different aircrafts or air units that you may possibly have. This list is going to show all of the aircrafts and air units that are currently compatible with the DJI goggles that you're in. This happens to be the 03 goggles, and as you see here, recently with the firmware update, we've gotten the DJI 04 Air Unit along with the Air Unit Pro, which is really neat. I don't currently own one, but I hope to have one soon. I'm just going to press the back button here, and then the back button once again. The next thing on the main menu is albums. When you press down on this, this stores or shows you any video that is in the albums. And the way you get albums, I didn't show you at the beginning of the video, but between the two eyepieces in the goggles, there's a slot for a micro SD card. If you insert an SD card in there, and you can format that, and we'll show you how to do that here shortly in the menu, it will actually display the videos that are stored on that. This is really handy if you lose your drone, but there's also another feature in here or section that shows you camera loss before crash or before video loss or whatever. So if you press down on this here, it'll actually start to display the video, and you can actually preview your video or maybe even see where your quad went down. So I'm going to hit the back button here and press it again. And now we're back out to the albums. And now we're going to go down to transmission here. We'll click on transmission. What this does, the main part of this here, is your ability to broadcast your signal or view the signal from another pilot. I have a separate video on this that covers this in depth. There'll be a little card in the upper right-hand corner as well as a link in the description that will cover that. But in a nutshell, you go down the broadcasting and you either turn it on or off. And the other thing here is focus mode. And what focus mode is you can either have it on off or auto. If your vision signal is breaking up because the bytes per second are slower, do you want it to focus the best picture towards the center of the view or just have it pixelated all over the view? I usually choose to have it on auto because that way if my vision starts to go, I at least have a clear view in the center, hopefully. The next thing down here is channel mode, and it's set to auto, and I always leave it at auto because I don't fly with a lot of different pilots. But you can put it on manual mode here, and then as you see over here on the left, you can change your frequency, and then you can change your bandwidth as well. So you can actually avoid other people's signal that way, which is really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back to auto because that's the way I fly this. And I'm going to hit the back button and then the back button one more time. Now we're going to go down the settings here. I'm going to press down on the 5D button. The first thing is safety. So as you see here, this is your maximum flight altitude. And as we all know, you can only fly 400 feet above ground level, AGL. Now, in my case, I live in the North Georgia mountain area, and where I take off from, the mountain may go up 300 or 400 feet. Well, I can fly within 400 feet of the ground. So that's why mine is set to 656 feet, because the distance from the takeoff point, I still may not be above 400 feet above ground level, but I may be 800 feet up from the takeoff point. So that's why mine's set higher. I would highly recommend if you live in a flat area that's set at the 394 feet. I don't know why they don't have 400 feet, but it keeps you from getting into trouble with the FAA. Your maximum flight distance here, I have set the no limit. So if you wanted to be restricted, where if you only wanted to walk 49 feet, you could set it to 49 feet. And that way, if you crash, you're going to crash within a 49-foot radius of where you took off. I always set mine the no limit. The return to home altitude, I have mine set to 164 feet. And this is going to vary depending on how high the objects are in your area. Remember, especially with the Avata, it does not have obstacle avoidance, so you're going to need to make sure you set this above anything that you're going to be flying over, and hopefully not through. Hit the back button one more time. Update home point. What this is going to do when you take off and it gathers the GPS data, it will automatically update the home point. If you're flying and you want to change the home point, let's say there's a mountain or a home or something that you want to fly around and you want the home point to be there, or let's say you've walked quite a distance while you're flying, you may want to change the home point so it comes back to home if you lose your signal. Aircraft compass calibration here, you can actually go through and calibrate it. There's no need to do that long as everything is green. Your IMU calibration, which is the flight controller in it, you can actually calibrate that if you want to. Goggles compass calibration, and that happens from time to time, but you can see mine's green and you can go through and calibrate your goggles. The goggles IMU, same thing. And then the camera view before loss, and that's what I was talking about earlier. When you click on this here, it will show a video of the view that the goggles have stored before the last time it was turned off. And what they're assuming is that you may have possibly crashed. But this automatically records every time you take off and land, or actually it saves it when you land, whether you have an SD card in the goggles or not. So it's a very handy feature. I have used this from time to time. The only bad thing about it is you can't actually save that to the SD card. So if you need to keep that video, you'd have to put your cell phone or something up to the eyepiece and record it that way. So there we have the next thing on the list is ESC beeping. And what that is I have that programmed on the C1 switch on my remote controller, and we'll get into that when we get into the remote controller. But if you were to turn it on, you can hear that there, that the ESCs are beeping to help find the drone if it's gone down. We're of course going to turn that off because that's annoying. Then you go into your advanced safety settings here. Now, if the aircraft has a signal loss, what do you want it to do? Well, I want it to return to home. Depending on where you're flying, you might want it to hover or land, depending. In my case, I want it to return to home. Now, the next option here is emergency propeller stop, and then the other option is landing protection. I have a video that covers these in great depth. Landing protection is something that you definitely want to explore, so I'm going to put a card in the upper right-hand corner as well as a link in the description, and you definitely should go watch that video and educate yourself, especially on the landing protection. I'm going to hit the back button one more time here. And as we see, the menu jumps right back to the top, so we've covered everything under safety. I'm going to exit out of that. And now we're going to go down to the control menu. Now, the first thing on the control menu is the remote controller. So we'll click that. And here we have button customization. And as you can see here, I had told you just a second ago that I have C1 set for ESC beeping. I'm going to press my C1 button on my remote controller right now, and you can hear that it's beeping the ESCs, which is electronic speed control. If I double press the C1 button, I've got it set for turtle mode, and you can change it to ESC beeping or turtle mode. And then I've got my gimbal here. I've got it set so the gimbal is up, recenter, and gimbal down. And you can change different functions in here as you see from the menu. You just click down on the 5D button, select what you want, and then back out of it. The custom mode, I fly in manual mode a lot. You would click on that and you've got manual mode or sport mode, and that configures the switch on the remote controller itself. So I'm going to hit the back button one more time. Stick mode. Pretty much everybody in the United States is going to fly in mode 2. In Europe and other countries, they may fly in mode 1. And some of the gamers like to fly in mode 3 because it resembles the remote controller like on a PlayStation. Gain and Expo. What Gain and Expo do is creates a curve for your joysticks. And these are the rates that I currently fly in and have for years. These rates only take effect when you're flying in manual mode. These gain rates here do not affect your normal and sport mode. As you notice down here, you have M mode attitude limit. If this was on, it's going to restrict the rotation limit on the aircraft, so you won't actually be able to do a roll or anything. But when you're learning manual mode, it does help you to keep from crashing. I do have a separate video on learning how to fly in manual mode. I will stick a card up there in the upper right hand corner, as well as a link in the description as well. I'm going to hit the back button one more time, and then we're going to go over to RC calibration. And this does happen from time to time. I have had this pop up with an error message, and it'll tell you that you have an RC stick error or whatever, and all you have to do is just go down, click start. So you'd go down and click start here and go through what the screen prompts you to do, and then it seems to be fine, which is wonderful. So I'm going to back out. The next thing we have is our gimbal pitch speed. So when you use your rotation wheel that's on the upper left of the remote controller, how fast do you want it to be? Slow, normal, or fast? And you see I have mine set to slow, but like I said, I use this Avata for real estate photography as far as videography for external and internal in homes. Gimbal calibration. You can actually have the gimbal calibrate. So if you find that your gimbal doesn't seem like it's at 0 degrees, you would go through this routine here. Units, depending on where you're at, I'm still used to the US system, but I know a lot of you do fly it in metric, and it works really well. The next thing, as you see here, is turtle mode, and we've covered that as far as you can actuate turtle mode from the menu if you don't have it set up on one of your custom buttons on your remote control. And then goggle tutorial here you can go into, and you could actually start the goggle tutorial if you wanted to learn. But I do appreciate you watching this video. And at this point, if you made it this far, I'd really appreciate you clicking the like button and maybe subscribe for more videos like this. So I'm going to press the back button one more time. Then we're going to go down the camera here. So we're going to click on camera. The first thing is aspect ratio. And remember earlier on in the video, if you press the joystick forward when you're in the main screen, you can actually change all of these settings from that quick menu. But aspect ratio here, you've got 4:3 or 16:9. I fly in the 16:9. The video quality, I normally film in 4K 60. But as you see, there's multiple different resolutions available here. The camera field of view, I've got mine set on normal because it won't change off of normal because I fly in the horizon steady mode as far as the filming. Record stabilization, as you see here, I have it in horizon steady like I just said. If you change it to rock steady, you can change the field of view to wide if you would like. The ISO limit here. So for auto ISO, you can set the limit. I normally set this to 800, but in this case, I have the camera set a little differently for our video here today in the studio. But I normally set the auto ISO limit to 800. That gives you a nice grain-free video. This here is your guidelines, which you can turn either off or on, and you can see you have multiple different guidelines. And what this does is puts a grid on the screen here. So if we jump all the way out, you can see now we have the cross on the screen. So we'll just go back in here, go back down the settings, go to camera, and we'll go back down to our grid. And I usually just leave that off, but this is personal preference on how you want to line up your shots and line up your drone to go through an obstacle, let's say. Center point does the same thing. It puts a center point on the screen, kind of gives you a bullseye there. The next thing is storage. So on storage here, you can see I have an SD card in there that's 110.8 gigs available. If I click on this, I can either use the internal storage in the Avata or the SD card, and I choose to use the SD card. We'll go down to format here. Now, since I have the SD card in the goggles, I can go format the card in the goggles. I can format the aircraft card itself, or I can format the internal storage. I can cancel, or I can do the internal storage here, and I'll click confirm, and you can see that it actually will format the internal storage. It confirms it, you press OK, and then I'm just going to click cancel here, and then hit the back button one more time. Now, if we go back to advanced camera settings here, this is where when you take off, do you want it to, or when you start recording, do you want it to record with both aircraft or goggles? I choose both. Camera view recording. What this does is, do you want your on-screen display to show in your goggles video? And I do, because that works really well for these YouTube videos. Auto record on takeoff. I do not have this on, but from time to time I do set this on so I don't accidentally forget to get the shot. Your color management here, I film in D-Log-M, which is a flat profile, which you do have to color grade once you've done your recording, but it does help to even out or pull things out of the shadows, which is nice. But if you're just normally flying and filming and you want to share things with your family and friends, I would just set it to normal. The next thing we have down here is the color display assist, which I told you I have that on because I am filming in the D-Log-M. Sharpness here, I have set to 0, but as you see, you can either decrease the sharpness or increase the sharpness, and it just depends on your cinematic style on what you want to see. Noise reduction, I do have set to 1, and personally, I really can't tell any difference, but I really want to have a nice, crisp, clean video for the way I'm using this Avata, so I set it to 1. The anti-flicker. Now, this is something that's important to set. Auto usually works, but if you're in North America, you want to set it to 60. And what that does is it helps to eliminate flicker from lights and things like that when you're inside, because our power runs in 60 hertz, and that's the same refresh rate the camera will use. The video subtitles, what this does is it creates a separate file that goes onto the SD card that can be used in other applications. So we'll jump back out of there, and as you see, that's the last thing other than to reset the camera parameters. And really not sure why you'd want to do this, but if you're selling your drone or something, you might want to reset the camera parameters, or if you just like going through the settings and resetting it up. So we'll hit the back button one more time. We'll go down to display here. We'll click on that. We've got our brightness, but remember from the beginning of the video, you can push your joystick back, get that quick menu at the top of the goggles, and you can adjust your brightness there. Display scaling. What that does is you can see we're using the full screen here. But let's say with your on-screen display, you want to have more room around it, or some people want to be more focused towards the center. So you may want to set that to 80%. As you can see, the screen got smaller. You could set it to 60% and have lots of real estate around. I've gotten used to flying in 100, but I have tried it at 80. And it is nice, especially with the on-screen displays where you got more dark area around the screen, and it helps you concentrate more. So that's something you might want to play around with. I'm going to hit the back button one more time. Do we want to display the home point while we're flying? And what that is that little H that kind of travels around your screen and points the direction back to home. And I like that feature. I think that's really neat. The Goggles defog, that is something you can turn on here, or you can turn it on the quick menu by pulling the joystick back towards yourself. Now, the Real View 2D, you see that's grayed out there, and then your Enable Real View PIP, picture in a picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, and if you go back up to 2D here, you can see you can have it on 3D or 2D. Now, what the difference is here, if we leave it on 2D here, and I'm going to turn on the picture in a picture, and I'm going to double tap the side of my goggles here. And as you see, there's a picture in the upper left-hand corner, and then I can move my head around here and I can pick up my remote controller. And that works really well if you want to pick up your remote or your motion controller. Now, if you turn this off and you switch this to 3D, it's very hard to capture. I have to record this using a different camera in the goggles. But if you put it to 3D,
This expands your field of view because each camera is independent and it's more realistic. So if you're not worried about the picture-in-a-picture where your aircraft's at, you're more worried about your surroundings, I would recommend trying it on 3D. At least play with that and you'll definitely see the difference when you do it yourself. So the way you get into that, remember, is by double tapping on the right side of the goggles. And sometimes you have to hit it kind of hard to get it to work. So I'm going to go ahead and set it back to picture-in-a-picture again, just so it's back the way it was. And then the about down here, this just tells you your aircraft firmware version. It also tells you your goggle serial numbers, the battery serial number, and the battery cycle count, which is nice to keep track of, and all the pertinent information here, which we usually don't look at, but I will look at the battery cycle count, and you can see this is a new battery. It only has 4 cycles on it. So we'll jump all the way back out, and then you have more down here, and you see we have wireless streaming, so you can wirelessly stream video from mobile phone or computer to your goggles, which I've never done, but I guess some people will want to do that. So in a nutshell, that's what the DJI Goggles 3 menu is with the Avata 2. If you're using the motion controller, it is going to be slightly different. You can use your motion controller to navigate some of the menus, but you can't actually get to all of them. Just remember your quick menus. Back towards yourself, you can turn on your defogger, adjust your brightness, hit your back button. Up from the bottom, you can change from camera to video mode here. You can change your mode from auto to manual. You can go back down and adjust your shutter speed. You can do all sorts of stuff. So remember, this menu's here. This menu is very handy at the bottom.
Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the menus and how the DJI Goggles 3 works. If you've made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could click the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I really do appreciate you all watching, and I'll definitely catch you on the next one.